been talking for a long time about the 1% working in the background, manipulating events. And increasingly, the 1% have come out of the background, becoming more and more visible in arguing and manipulating for the end of a global technocratic tyranny. And now we've gone to the next stage, where one of them wants to be president. In fact, it could be well argued that one of them is already president in Donald Trump. But in this guy, Michael Bloomberg, we have another level. Michael Bloomberg is one of the richest people in the world and owner of the Bloomberg news operation, operates globally. And he wants to be president of the United States as a Democrat. Now, the last thing Bloomberg is a Democrat by any criteria of what a Democrat used to be. But he wants to become president on basically a single issue, which is, I'm the best person to get rid of Trump. And Bloomberg is an ultra-Zionist multi-billionaire, while at the same time, Donald Trump is owned by Israel, or more to the point, the cult that has hijacked Israel. And so we face the possibility, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but this is what I'm sure is desired to happen. We're going to face the possibility in this year's presidential election of someone owned by Israel, Donald Trump, billionaire, being faced up by an ultra-Zionist Israel firster, Michael Bloomberg, who is another step up, not just in the 1%, but another step up in terms of connections to the Israeli hierarchy. And of course, that simply makes any claim to America being a, quote, democracy, actually, officially it's a republic, to be nonsense. Because some of us have been pointing out for a long, long time that this myth, oh my God, is it a myth, that anyone can become president of the United States? That's what they used to believe, you know, is intelligence insulting. And the more that we've moved towards present day, the more ridiculous it's become, as it's become ever more obvious that only a tiny few, acceptable to the 1%, can become president of the United States. And when you've got the prospect of two billionaires, particularly answering to Israel, that are, in theory, possible, they could face each other for the American presidency, you know that we've reached a point where America, as we've known it, is on the brink of disappearing, not just for that reason, but for many other reasons. Now, the other Democratic frontrunner, because what's happened is Bloomberg came in late after the others had basically trashed each other. And he's not debated with anyone yet. That should be entertaining. But what he's done, because this man has so much money, it's breathtaking. But he cares about the people and justice and fairness, you know. And so he's been spending his money since he entered the race, simply buying television advertisements in prime time. So far, he's apparently spent more than $400 million on advertisements on American television and I guess other outlets, telling people how wonderful Bloomberg is. Now, Bloomberg, if you look at his background, is an unbelievably hard sell. I mean, oh dear. I mean, the trust factor is like zero for anyone who's even looked at the guy. But he has, through this technique of just buying advertisements, because he can, of reaching something like 15% currently in the polls to win the Democratic nomination. And his main opponent, as things stand for that nomination, is Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is an openly avowed socialist. And if either Sanders or Bloomberg gets in, then woke and all its extremes of political correctness and open borders will be unleashed. And if Trump gets in, it will be business as usual, and almost certainly there's going to be a conflict with Iran because, and I mean a military conflict, because he has given Israel, Trump, everything they've demanded, everything so far, including this outrageous so-called deal of the century, which basically hands occupied lands to the Israeli elite. But he's not given them yet conflict with Iran, although they are at war with Iran through sanctions alone. But I mean military war, because Trump well knows that would be electorally suicide, given that he got in 2016 to a large extent because he said he wouldn't do anything like that. Get the troops out and all that stuff. But he'll go on being Israel's man in the White House. And if Bloomberg wins, he will be big time Israel's man in the White House. And if Sanders wins, he might not be as openly pro-Israel, but he's there to a very large extent. He's another Jewish guy, like Bloomberg. And whatever, if the Democrats win, then woke will run riot. So this is where we've got in the so-called most powerful country in the world, where that is the choice that Americans are likely to face. There may be someone comes out of nowhere, possible, but I'm talking as it looks at the moment. And Bloomberg is so staggeringly arrogant and has such contempt for fairness and justice and basic integrity that he's told his Bloomberg news operation, very influential, particularly in the financial area, but others too, when he started running for president, that they would not, the journalists there, would not investigate him in this period where he's running for president, or any other Democratic candidate, but they were quite okay to investigate Trump. So let's just take a breath here and see where we are in the disappearance of what is bravely called democracy and freedom. We are in a situation currently where Michael Bloomberg, one of the world's richest men, is buying the presidency, or at least setting out to, and being quite successful so far in building up a 15% support in the polls, while never debating an issue, simply buying adverts. And the same guy has such contempt for the media and the public's right to know that he has banned the journalists he owns from putting out anything basically that's negative about him, while being okay to put out, I guess, as much negativity as possible about Donald Trump. And I say that as someone who absolutely does not support Trump. Don't say that everything he says does not have validity, but in general, overall, because I know who owns him. And I certainly don't support Michael Bloomberg, but it's about fairness, and it's about the free flow of information. And we have come to this point now where Michael Bloomberg is setting out to buy the presidency because he can, at least financially has the ability to, and he is showing utter contempt for his own news organization. And why Bloomberg journalists have not walked out in protest. But then again, they're thinking, I've got a mortgage to pay. So how much further can we fall? The next stage is just an imposed dictator. I mean, if Bloomberg should win, that's the end of America. The fact that he wins is the end of America. The fact that he can win in the circumstances I'm describing is the end of America. But it will certainly be the end of America in terms of the policies he'll introduce, because he's going to unleash this agenda, not least basically opening the southern border. That will be an end to America. Why? Because that's been the idea all along, as I've been saying for so long. There's another story this week. It's not necessarily true, but it does fit. The headline is War Criminal, Bloomberg's Choice for Running Mate. And I would absolutely say that it's almost certain that if he did run, his running mate would be a woman. And he may go with someone else, but he is reported here to be considering Hillary Clinton as his vice president nominee. Now, that combination of Michael Bloomberg and Hillary Clinton would indeed be the end of America. But either way, we just need to face the fact that the idea there's a conspiracy to overthrow America as we've known it is absolutely not a myth or people in tin hats in their bedroom posting on the internet. It's been obvious to anyone who actually was prepared to look, but now look at the situation I'm describing. Political choice? What an absolute joke. And I said, I've been saying to people, once Bloomberg came forward with his money, watch Michael Bloomberg, because this guy is ruthless and certainly would not enter the race in his narcissism unless he thought he could actually buy the presidency. So he is one to watch. We can only hope that the American people suss him. And his big problem is when he does have to debate with Sanders and whoever else is left in the race, because he has no policy substance. His policy is what the agenda of the 1% is, and he's running for the so-called Democratic nomination. So it will be interesting to watch him try to debate from a point of billionaire perspective and no substance in terms of being a Democratic candidate against Bernie Sanders, who, while there's an enormous amount about Sanders that I don't agree with, for the simple reason that Sanders will introduce the new woke agenda, which is tyranny. But I think Sanders does actually believe what he's saying. Well, at the core, a lot of other stuff he may not, but says anyway, like all politicians. And it will be interesting to see Bloomberg, who basically believes in one thing, and that's Michael Bloomberg, debating Sanders, who does actually believe the core, I think, of what he says. And has been, of course, campaigning for it for so long. At least it's been consistent. So the American elections, because the so-called Super Tuesday is coming up in March, where there's lots and lots of primaries that will vote that day, and then we'll see if Bloomberg is going to make it or not. I really, really hope not.